Chom den den chambe yong la cha za lo kong ge lo de dim nye den nye tra nam da rab sra ve chi nye den gung chi yin zi nye je tu kara le kun zen kong dai si be zun ri ma ri mun tam dung e chi ze ve ro soi kun la pu je tar ze yin la tu ye yong den song ru da re che New Mon Yin Le Ye Chao Don Ron Ze Jin Mare Muzre Dumara Nyugu Chin Ye Jun Ze Ra Che Nam Dene Ta Jin Sa Ju Tar Zun Yin Den Lu Zo Ye Se Tu Ve Gu Jun Tra Ju Don Jun Yi Jin Zhe Da Le Mus Jan Be Yong La Zedin Shiji Chinra Vizreji Dalu Temu Manpa Rapsarane Kadan Tenju Yonglo Topayi Loju Pope Nongwa Saltu So Namda Zudum Sergi Saji Tenzen Pame Reling Gwenze Sharab Yede Tongwe Chogunsa Tumchon Drove Lama Shaki Yuro Jamya Shana Durje Jenreze Sayi Nimbo Devanam Prasare Namge Nimbo Shamba Kunduzan Nyewe Seshin Jela Sha Lo Shije Kala Chinrab Jenguraje Zebe Don Durje Len Lapo Gerve Tenpa Gunne Sanzebe Gaju Rinpoche La Sha Cha Lo Tsarab Gundu Siye Danyi Le Tamke Samu Shagi Yong Zongxin Shongchub Namkin Nimpe Lamken Karma Pa Mishe Debe Jiwe Zuge Du Laso Nambalinje Tsangmala Tene Ta Pöge Lo Sawa Trashi Dele Shui Dede de Yindu Tatare Ma Kamishue de Papa Tsedan Yi Pagdume Bendo de Gun Dot Kamishuna Sams.
Khenpo Rinpoche begins by wishing a good new year to everyone. The Tibetan New Year happened a couple of days ago, a week or two ago, and therefore he would like to wish a happy new year to everyone. Today he will begin by giving an introduction to a sutra named the Sutra which sets forth unequaled, boundless longevity and wisdom. Aparimitāyurjnāna in Sanskrit.
Chapter 2 Talo Nitong Yishani Gelonde Tene Kam Sampaling Choso de Tsune Lotuni Takta Rovi Cabre The Lotuni Girin La Tene Angarazo Ta Chegan de la Gigi in Besson Che Chutigi Ore Chanazol Homa in Besson Che Ningi Ore Ngaranza Parula Tene Pe Delam de Shindu Tumbotan Gabotan Tende Chonson Lotuni Girin Ngayang Nasa Dupon Rao Tende Zan Majong Pe Jivuchong Tigayang Tashi de Lekubi.
In particular, Khenpo Rinpoche would like to mention that this year, 2022, is the year of the past 12 years of the functioning of karma sampling here in Vienna. It was established 12 years ago, And Khenpo has, throughout this period, acted as the spiritual guide of this Buddhist community, and all of you who are members or who come on and off to the various courses that have been given regularly are his disciples. And Khenpo Rinpoche would like to say that throughout this period, major adverse events such as serious illness and so on hasn't happened to him. So this 12-year period has been a period without adverse events happening. Thus one can say that this 12-year period has been a period where spiritual guide and disciples have interacted in harmony with one another. And he would say he would like to tell everyone that he's pleased with that this is the case.
Chidane tanda karse nge misi nang la peche lo ngapchu ngasum tse jirin la kasa kane Chödrak she tende che debi yang ripido je ka ten ta kashe le tozun digla la mendila tende shongsong kashe le chambo shongsong la tarin lo juni gi nang tala pechi wuchung.
Now, in general, Khenpo Rinpoche has spent approximately 50 years teaching the Buddha Dharma in various places in many countries of our world. He has taught far and wide, as it were. Now, in the past, there have sometimes been adverse events, spelling for disharmony, strife, arguments, and the like. This has happened, though in the past there have also been many periods of good circumstances. However, this last 12-year period during this period, no adverse events such as strife, disharmony, arguments and the like have not occurred. And Khenpo Rinpoche would like to say or make clear that he's particularly happy about the fact that arguments, strife, or any other type of adverse event haven't happened during this period, this last 12-year period.
Tinge tarin kasa tu le namba la din do de songro nang singarang ge shuju chung la ten jang thaye do je ge yang ngaran so gang ka chang ma la yin ji mi song na ya gun do ta khang de sna zambelin de la 내게는 삼지 미샤바지 가사칼에 찬 나르송아 나라송 원섬세 때는 마음중에 단다 롱 심바래 때는 내 툭 무게 제버래 단내 나라래 마음중 롱어래 다 무게 체지 차례마도 뒤 두근데 제 체디 Then ngaranza tsangmake dode samotsolo sanjel so atebjita hachang keshambure sampudo.
Now, in terms of the sutra, the name of it read up earlier, Khenpo Rinpoche has asked that all who are connected with him, that they do recite and practice these sutra as much as they can, when their time allows them to do so. Also, the present Karmapa, Trinle Tayerdorje, has said the same. He asks all Buddhist practitioners to recite and practice this sutra as much as is possible, and in terms of his monasteries, the members of the monastic institutions attached to the present Karmapa, Trinle Tayerdorje, are all in the present reciting and practicing this sutra on a daily basis. This sutra is said to be particularly effective in terms of counteracting adverse events, in particular those that occur during so-called degenerate times. And we're living in a period of degeneration, and the Buddhist scriptures mention that during this type of period, a degenerate period, there will be pandemics, there will be war and starvation, and of course many other adverse events. A pandemic is at hand in the present, and now recently war has started. So perhaps starvation in various parts of the world would occur within a near future. So in order to contribute to counteracting all of these adverse events, it is recommended that one recites and practices this specific sutra.
Paktumepen dode chevre dode ta zongre diore zondo songdoa zonde sabayina tene chepar pakbe setang chepar pakbe yeshe pergre songerapchre.
Now this sutra sets forth Dadi Sepamegi Tsen This sutra sets forth a so-called dharani, which is a specific type of mantra, as it were. And the dharani set forth in this sutra is made up of the 108 epithets of Amitāyus, the Lord or Buddha of limitless long life. And by way of reciting this dharani and practicing the meditation that goes with it. By way of doing so, one enhances, as it were, or this kind of practice makes for unequaled, boundless longevity and wisdom. The Setang Yesheni Pakdume Patela Tene Tandagi Nedang Mantula Sopa Ma Shia Chig Erego. Yeah. It's explained in the context of this sutra that by way of doing this practice, one counteracts the adverse circumstances at hand right now, the pandemic, the war, and possible future starvation.
Tanto Songapode Jitin Kamdin on the Songapode, Jamden de Shacha Tubare.
Now, in terms of our world system, it was Buddha Shakyamuni, the historic Buddha of our time, who set forth this sutra.
And the
place where he set forth this sutra is that of Shravasti, a place in today's India, a place where he spent many years of his life.
Tando de Shuapote Ninto Zor Dachambache, Devijitop Ninto Mongo Sare, Dorna, Ninto Gelon, Chectoni Jangash Tampa Yortla, Monsieur.
Shuva po Koranso Nyampo Shuvare
Nyambush Sonrochis Yashuyamare, the Lanzamte to Sanjeg Koran Hang Somput.
Ten Shuva po Mindu?
Shuva po Seguia the cars and the Jiki Shuva people some Guamare. Do the Ninkintla.
Aha, okay. Yeah, right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, at the time, there was a large group of fully ordained monks at Shravasti, 1,250 it seems, who were all practitioners of the Shravaka path, that is to say, Theravada Buddhism, and the majority of those individuals in this group had attained the final goal of the Shravaka path, so-called arhathood, enlightenment according to Theravada Buddhism. So there was this group of fully ordained monks present, and in terms of disciples of Buddha Shakyamuni who at the time practiced Mahayana Buddhism, the gathering was much larger. It is explained that the Bodhisattvas present, and the most prominent among them was Manjushri, the Bodhisattva said to embody wisdom. And their numbers, the number of Bodhisattvas who were there, as was said, they were many, they numbered in the millions apparently. One also has to consider here what the structure of a so-called world system in Buddhism, where you have the earth we live on, planet Earth, the planet we live on, planet Earth, and then you have other dimensions, some of them said to be godlike or paradise-like, inhabited by individuals in godlike circumstances. And as to that dimension of our world system, there are also many Buddhist practitioners, and some are quite developed, have made quite some progress on the path to enlightenment, and there were many of those individuals as well who were present at Sravasti. And at the time, Buddha Shakyamuni set forth this sutra, which is centered around the Dharani that's made up of the 108 epithets of Buddha Amitayus, Lord of limitless long life.
Oh yeah, that is on to drink Katsang to Sunday, Tokyo Chink to search in do.
Tokyo, it is city?
Namtong Mongo, long that to search in do. Oh, this Sarasity Chuchong Tin and the Kormongo del Kandeshung, the Keja rating in the USA.
Now, in terms of what was just said, namely that there were millions of bodhisattvas present and many individuals from godlike existences and so on and so forth, this may be hard to grasp for a lot of people in today's world, in that in general, the mindset of humans in today's world is a mindset of it's a mindset which asks so many questions about each and every little thing. The mindset of today, in general, among the human population, is such that it's difficult for individuals to relate to or to accept an idea or a presentation of something they have not themselves experienced or seen or heard about. In that, the general mindset among humans in today's world is a mindset of constant thought involving a lot of doubts and hesitation, based in the conceptual workings of the worldly mindset, which then prevents humans in today's world from being able to relate to what was just explained, thinking how could all those people fit into that small place called Shravasti?
Tindu Dindreg Netla Ishekiwala Durjatan to Tongbo Sunam de Tsogisa. Then a Samotongba la Quachimbu, Chadevagiana, then Tewachimbundo de Samisha Chapitsu Song Devan Denzo the Isheji to Bremato, Temikala.
So, in fact, a sutra like this one of Mahayana Buddhism, for an individual to be able to grasp the details we just spoke about, as well as the rest of the contents of the sutra, for an individual to be able to relate to and understand what is said, it takes that the individual in question is a person of great merit to begin with, someone who has in a very extensive manner engaged in virtuous actions for many, many lifetimes, and an individual who also has a very deep and profound knowledge of so-called emptiness. For other people, or for those who have not yet achieved this, it may prove difficult to relate to what the sutra sets forth.
Da sanje gi dode ma song chadu sanje gi shinjil lamne derin dube khor ninto yinai da sonju samba yinai da sochi khor ladam me kande ji yese tege dene sanje gi shin lab dene shar gi shogin jikten jikam chang me pala sanje nam jin don dirang song deva Tejindu Debjila, Shara, Flo, Sho, Ye, Shonsam Ye, the Ye, the Oni, the Jula, Don the Ram, Song Deva, Conso Yichi Jeviche, the Shenja Labna. Tin the Tongbon Zone, the Tima, Gu in a Lebre.
Tengmagu, Shumari.
Tima, that you, Rauch Lebre.
It's further explained in terms of this sutra in the context of Buddha Shakyamuni setting forth this sutra at Shravasti. The Buddha at the time explained to the audience, and if you remember, there was the 1,250 individuals of monastic ordination. The majority of them had attained arhathood. Then there were the millions of bodhisattvas. There were individuals from godlike existences, and there were other people, humans, Buddhist practitioners devoted to the practice of the path to enlightenment. Now, by way of the power of the Buddha's spiritual influence, Digi chin labla tenne
kun number so chama ge sanje zo ge song deva hinkam den zon ye
by the power of, or by way of his spiritual influence, Buddha Shakyamuni made it possible for everyone. Now, of course, those who had attained various levels of enlightenment or levels of realization on the path might have been able to fully relate to what the Buddha said. However, as we saw, there were also Buddhist practitioners not yet at these levels, who had not yet attained these levels, who were present. So, for the benefit of all, the Buddha, by way of his spiritual powers, made innumerable Buddha fields visible to all the members of the audience. And here one has to say a few words again as to the structure of a so-called world system. We live on planet Earth here, we human beings. Now, according to Buddhist cosmology, a universe isn't made up of just a single planet like planet Earth and some surrounding stars, a sun and a moon and a handful of other planets. A world system is referred to as a trilliocosm, indicating a trillion of world systems like ours. So ours isn't the only one in this entire universe. And there are dimensions of existence within a trilliocosm that are very different from planet Earth and similar planets. There are so-called Buddha fields, existences of utter purity, where the individuals who inhabit these Buddha fields are individuals who have reached very high levels of realization and enlightenment. And Buddhist cosmology in that regard speaks of, in terms of the regard of the many components of a universe, as was just explained in brief, sums a universe like that up. One way of summing it up is in the context of the so-called 10 directions. What you find in the 4 cardinal directions, south, north, west, east, and then you have the so-called directions in between, the southwest, the northwest, etc., etc., as well as above and below. These are the so-called 10 directions, which in Buddhist cosmology encompass a trilliocosm, and therefore includes much more than the universe we're taught about at school, here among the human population on planet Earth, on this planet Earth, which is restricted to the planet Earth we inhabit, the sun and the moon in connection with our planet Earth, stars and a handful of other planets. So the universe, the so-called trilliocosm, Buddhism sets forth is much, much vaster. Now, as the members of the audience at Shravasti were reciting the Dharani, at the same time, within this vast universe, the Trilliocosm, in all Buddha fields of the 10 directions just listed, everyone was simultaneously doing the same recitation. And Buddha Shakyamuni at Shravasti made this visible so that all members of the audience at Shravasti were able to witness what was going on in those Buddha fields, namely the individuals there reciting the same Dharani as they did, so they could see those Buddha fields, they could hear the recitations made there simultaneously with their own recitation. So throughout they were able to perceive the recitation and practice being done throughout the entire Trilliocosm. Due to the spiritual influence of Buddha Shakyamuni.
Ta sanje ki kap tedu sanje ki tukje da shinlam la tenne changme sanje tenzo changme be sanje jebre changme be sanje de gen don de zondon de son de ge yebre ti indu ta te son goyate
de sanje ki shin se de da sanje tsovu chi kyongirwa tene yang chanshub sempa sachula nepala sopa endishi kogure kandishi kogure
ta pen
tanda de
sanje shakje teben de la songwarwa
re
ta sanje yinji lu song de yarwa
re
tende ki segi yarwa
re sanje de dan korangi kor
ya ta tende je song
chochu na shupe sanje
ya te song yongtu ta sanje ki tukje konso je tu buyare tene shin den so yang thong tu buyare te chi che de te konso hal le go ye ge yi che che be tabro ta de no sum tu nambarwa.
Now one of the purposes of the Buddha making this possible was to inspire devotion in the members of his audience. So a so-called Buddha field, there a Buddha is the guiding figure, as it were, and then you have all of those who are his disciples, much like Buddha Shakyamuni and his disciples in Shravasti. And we can imagine, perhaps, that the extent of a Trilliocosm is so vast that this would involve innumerable Buddhas and their disciples. And all of this was witnessed by the members of the audience at Shravasti at the time.
Tene ta tande karla ngan rabula tende sanje shinje tubeke che number sola shinlam rabu ngar kaya phuju ya mare yin ya sanje ki sung la yishe che ne ten shochu sanje thamje che ndon de phyo samje me sha ba yin sa zondo de song biye sambe me pa chen song go biye.
Khenpo Rinpoche says he doesn't have that kind of spiritual power. He can't make this sort of thing visible to all of you. He himself, he explains, isn't able to witness all of this. However, he does urge you to place confidence in the words of the Buddha, to understand that what the Buddha said at the time and what is explained in the sutra were true words. You can trust that what was described to you did happen at the time. Namely, that those present in Shravasti were able to witness the Buddhas and their disciples throughout the Buddha fields in the 10 directions, reciting the same dharani as they recited at Shravasti, at the feet of Buddha Shakyamuni, or in the presence of Buddha Shakyamuni. Next, having introduced the members of the audience to what was just described, the Buddha went on to list the benefits that come from practicing this sutra. He set forth 18 principal benefits that originate with this dharani. It is explained that the mindset needed when doing this practice is a mindset of devotion, trust, confidence, and the like in the Buddha and the Buddha Dharma, as well as compassion for all sentient beings. And in terms of the many benefits, one of them is that as a result of reciting this dharani, premature death is averted and a lifespan of 100 years may be obtained. Now, if we consider the present pandemic that rages throughout our world, this disease, or its disease, is a disease which makes for premature death. And then if we consider the war that's raging in the present, one could in short say that its cause is a mindset of a power-hungry person simply, Tene karesong song digiti. For the sake of extending one's power over new territories, so many people in the millions suffer in the present.
Tatine tendai into memang chewane tu main be chewa yimba koranyang shegi yo mari parten. Then ngaran so tan nangbaji indu dezo tu main be chewan de yungo do akaka samne sanjer tebache doden den konso tu main be chimbe go monam tebnan.
And so because of all of that, there is also premature death. People are slaughtered simply. And so when reciting the Dharani, one should pray for the end of that happening, for the sake of all who suffer in this way in the present, both in terms of those who are ill and may near death as to the pandemic, and those trapped in war. Now, most people in the world, if one speaks of the human population in general, may not even, because of their ignorance, consider the fact that what's happening is premature death. It's the death of many that would not have occurred hadn't there been a war, hadn't there been a pandemic.
And
it's not just humans who are slaughtered. A very vast number of animals are also slaughtered, primarily in warfare. Now, humans in these horrible circumstances are able to seek shelter and so on because of the higher capacity of the intellect compared to animals. They are able to ask for help, they are able to beg for food and so on. So, therefore, human beings are better off in those circumstances than animals. An animal won't know how to do all those things.
Oh yeah. Mig sengente pet marapchane then sencha dukja shira the jebendua kalung the oxygen kanga kanwa yetende.
And in terms of the human population, some humans, in terms of their mindset, are about a mindset of evil to begin with. You just have to consider the people who invented some of the horrible weapons used, such as the bombs, which, when dropped and when exploding, make for a high-pressure wave which suffocates everyone in the area and cause their death in this way. And many hundreds of those bombs have been dropped on the population in Ukraine by the Russian military.
This Gongpachi Ngaransu Yinanda. The Yepse Yurte Method Tindronika Ngaransu Seram Nender de Vachanjanova.
And all the humans there, as well as the animals there, have been our mothers.
Tin the Tenzole Nekap Tumayin Bichola Tana Chita, some Tana,
So one should
pray
for them being saved from premature death and those horrible circumstances, while focusing on Buddha Shakyamuni.
Then Zong the Songere, Zong the Pinga,
If one resides in that frame of mind, it will benefit those beings.
Tene Tagana Shinge, Zong the Jig, Song, Zong de la Tapena, Marangan Duntum Dun a chirp up Zong Pesa, this or the chirp up pull Tende Chavayina. The Shiva order to young, Nisong the Mendroa Pingere Song. Naranta Yin so the young Tipindos.
Then there is yet another benefit. Now, the sutra, the scripture itself, in Buddhism, it's a tradition to place the scriptures at a high level, close to a shrine. And it's also in order to show respect and devotion for those scriptures, in that those scriptures are made up of words that make it possible for practitioners to attain enlightenment simply. It's also a tradition to make offerings to the scriptures, placed in this manner next to a shrine. And the benefit from making this type of offering is that oneself and those one prays for may thus avoid rebirth in any of the three lower existences.
Daga nanshinge zong chebar jende zong nangbayina da pen chamme pa ngai dikpa yang thatu gre song.
Now Buddhism speaks of 5 evil acts that are so serious that they are referred to as the 5 inexpiable acts. And making offerings in this way to this sutra can, on the basis of regret and the like in terms of those acts, makes it possible to avoid the consequences, the karmic consequences of those acts.
Daga nanshinge donde kange song donde song tubayina dikpa phungbo raptam ji yona ya tiang thang ro gre song.
A mass of karma accrued from evil acts can, on the basis of this practice, be purified.
Daga nanshinge dejin shepa ge dejin shepa sanje ge rinsel dongru nabza la sopa nangju chu pyu ne Rinpoche Adunje, Chödrak Ritsam Yembale.
The condition, dung ring cell.
Dejin Shepe,
Oh, Dejin Shepa.
Dejin Shepe, Rinser Yupe, Chödrak Ritsam Yembatan, Zondo de Linky Dervani Piandra, somewhat Sonam Tosai.
It's also said that just reciting this dharani once, of course you have to consider the mindset on the basis of which you recite, whether you have generated that mindset or not. However, if the proper mindset is at hand while reciting this dharani just once, the merit from that one recitation would be greater than the merit resulting from having a large reliquary constructed with the made up of the 5 precious substances, gold, silver, and so on. A reliquary which housed, for example, sacred substances of Buddha Shakyamuni. So the single recitation of this dharani on the basis of the right mindset, the merit of that would be greater. And on the basis of reciting this dharani properly, the true nature of all things, dharmata, can be realized. Even if not in this life, that can be achieved upon death, in the state between death and a new rebirth.
Then, pardon tungre song. That theater the machonaya, then pardon ne, devachingi shingin jikin la jene, ter tung to gure song.
If the practitioner isn't able to achieve this, then he could achieve rebirth in a pure land, such as Devachen.
The Tanganzo zone the song go ahead of it, Tindachi and don't the Shifrashishena, the Mongoshita Shuendo, that to second Dangmento, Telashagi.
So the explanations today are very brief. There is much more to be said in the context of this sutra. However, we don't have time to go into all of that. So that concludes the explanations, or rather the introduction to this sutra. Now, a Buddhist practitioner, as the benefits that were explained in brief were told by Buddha Shakyamuni himself to begin with, a Buddhist practitioner would trust in that those benefits are at hand or will come to pass in consequence of practicing this sutra.
대주도 다처럼 파고 세상에 시바도 매번 노된데 파르지 거스 젠던 파르거스 대처럼 게 참인 던스 대저게 네 시간을 누구면 송수 대 그런 게 맛이 바르도 니마를 찬이 슈장을 짜네 차고 말해.
Now, Khenpo Rinpoche explains a bit about the life of his father. His father was a person in East Tibet who held a high political office. And after the invasion of communist China, he became one of the leaders of the Tibetan resistance movement. And as such, he was responsible for the death of many enemies killed, as well as your own people also being killed in battle. Now, to make a long story short, he and his family were able to flee to India, where they settled in today's Indian state of Sikkim, where previously the 16th Karmapa had settled upon having fled Tibet. And when meeting with His Holiness, Khenpo's father had explained that he was a person who in this life had committed many evil acts that contradicted the principles of the Buddhist path, and that he regretted this and asked for advice as to what to do in order to rid himself of the karma he had accrued in this way. His Holiness had given him the advice to recite this sutra. And Khenpo's father did so every day of his life, ever since he asked for this advice, till his death, 25 times every day.
Then, 시간 나가는 오늘 간서고 두담 600원짜리 첨부전 종.
And upon his death, he was seated in meditation, and it became clear that he had come to see the true nature of his mind, Dharmata.
That in there, the Tangman and Zochi, Mountain Shison, some don't the doors can be sought.
So please keep in mind all of those who are trapped in warfare right now, and all of those who are trapped in the possibility of near death because of the pandemic, and pray for all of them while reciting this sutra.
Tene Manchu Ginyong Gil Sana Tandu Tene Tang Munanga to Temote de Vanrabo Mahimpa, Nyongat, Missiba Dungario.
Now,
Khenpo
Rinpoche says he, as a child, experienced being trapped in warfare, as he and his family and many other people, a large group, fought their way through Tibet to get to the border and be able to leave. And to be in the midst of warfare is not the same as watching the warfare on the television screen at all. It's very different. It's horrific. There is unspeakable fear in your mind. There is hunger, because usually there is hardly any food available. You're thirsty. You're exhausted because you can't just lie down and sleep or take a rest when you feel like it. You have to keep going. And you do not know if you're on the right path or the wrong path in terms of escaping those who have attacked your country. And if you make it to the final destination, i.e. across the border, you don't know what your life is going to be like because you have left everything you had behind. However, if you make it, things have improved a bit in today's world. There are NGO organizations and the like who wait for refugees on the safe side of the border and feed them and help them out as much as possible when they arrive there. And this sort of work is very fantastic. It's something very good. So one should rejoice in the work of those people. By way of doing so, one accumulates great merit. And one should, as much as one can, give contributions in terms of helping those affected by the war. As Shantideva frequently said, that Indian Buddhist master, you should do whatever you can to help those who have no protection, to help those who are left with nothing. And people in warfare are helpless, and they are left with nothing, and they have no protection whatsoever. So the best would be if you at least once a day can recite the sutra once or twice, keeping those people in mind as was described. If you can't do the entire sutra, at least the dharani. Now, the time is too short to do the remaining verses of the 37 practices today, so we will do that next weekend. Next Sunday, sorry.